Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur. Looking forward to the program today. Have a dynamite guest for you talking politics. We have a new prime minister. Yeah. Carbon tax. And maybe we can actually see a coast-to-coast pipeline happening in Canada. Is that possible? Well, we'll find out here today. Dan McTeague joins us from Ontario. Dan served as a Liberal MP for, I think, 18 years in Ontario. Now the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, their website, affordableenergy.ca. Many of you know Gas Wizard, right? You check it to find out what the local prices are in your area. That's part of Dan's company as well. So great to have you with us, Dan.
Paul, great to be here, and thank you. Lots to cover, but no doubt, I think a big attention to be focused on a pocketbook issue, something that my old party hasn't really focused on in at least a decade, and that's concern about the cost of gasoline.
Yeah, well, tell us, maybe just briefly give us a snapshot of what is your company or organization about, Canadians for Affordable Energy.
Yeah, we do a lot of work based on some of the work I had done as a parliamentarian that was policy oriented. So looking at various government policy initiatives. We've had a lot to work with, obviously, with the federal government and its green energy, green agenda, net zero agenda, all of these things and their implications on Canadians. And of course, when we first started out, some of this I'd done on my own, but a bit of freelancing with other companies I had worked with. Not many people paid attention. Tax was only with 3 or 4 cents a liter. I mean, that was a rounding error for many people. Sometimes prices went up or down on that in a given day. But that was 2017, 2018. Come 2022, 2023, and now 2024 and 5, you're looking at prices that are having a significant impact, not just on the actual cost of energy, but also on the cost of everything else. At the root of our market is, of course, energy prices. And the more affordable they become, the more competitive we become, the greater standard of living. The less affordable they become, that tends to have an impact on the bottom line and a knock-on effect on our prosperity. And that's exactly where we find ourselves today. A good majority of Canadians being very worried about the cost of living. It displays all other issues to the detriment of other factors that I think are important, but no less important than abilities for people to make ends meet.
Yeah, affordability is going to be a huge election issue. No two ways about that. So we'll come back to that in a little bit here. I want to maybe just backtrack a little bit here. We have a new prime minister right now. So, of course, we had a leadership race that, a lot of people weren't fond of, so I'm not sure how you viewed it. Did you have any concerns about the manner it was conducted in? And if so, what would you like to see changed in how these things are handled?
Well, it came rather dramatically because the caucus finally realized that, coming back with 6 seats is not a winning solution. Justin Trudeau had to leave, but the alternative was no better in the sense that he has had a direct hand in the economics of the country, as we've seen it over the past 5 years, directly involved with policies that I think to a large extent, no matter where you are in the country, there's no doubt that things have gotten worse over the past 5 years, and you can blame a lot of reasons for it, but bad public policy is at the core of this. A lot of it net zero climate policies, which have aggravated the ability for people to make ends meet and challenged our ability to have a more brighter future. That, of course, with reckless spending hasn't helped either. But I think for a lot of Canadians, the transition from Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney is really comes down to, as the old song from The Who would be, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. There is a real good chance here I think Canadians may get fooled again.
So you're not a Mark Carney fan. So the way that whole internal election was handled, would you have, if you could offer the current Liberal Party any advice on how to change that up? What should they do? Was it stacked for Carney, you think?
Well, you would think that there's a field of 8 candidates being reduced to 4 and then not having a debate really about issues, but, really sort of self-congratulatory, hating conservatives, Donald Trump, orange hair, bad man. It doesn't amount to a semblance of changing at the top the direction of the country. And I have a full conflict of interest. The only one who managed to survive and showed a little bit of bravado is my good friend since I've known since 5 years of age. We went to school together, Frank Baylis.
Oh, wow.
And folks that weren't liberals when I was a liberal, certainly. But it's a whole, it's basically, I think, a setup and a charade. And I think the results showed that 86% for one candidate with less than half the people signed up. And it's very easy to sign up. not even bothering to cast a ballot. And then, of course, a man who became prime minister without the consent of the people, even if it's 24 hours or 1 week into the mandate or into his period of time. I think it shows for many Canadians this wasn't a debate on the basis of differing ideas. This was basically a coronation for all intents and purposes. And it's as expected. The Liberals are simply going to default back to the old ways and on their old policies. And make no mistake, the policies he's announced, the signature one on carbon taxes, you are going to wind up paying for, whether it's transparent or not. Get ready for higher prices as long as
Okay. Yeah, I want to come back to that carbon tax thing here in just a moment. Let me just ask you first, I guess. Okay, so it's been a while. I think you finished as an MP. Was it in 2011, somewhere around there?
Right.
And okay, so if you could offer them some advice, what would it take to swing the Liberal pendulum back more to the center? Because they definitely seem left of center, unless I'm totally the only one out there seeing this. But so what would it take to get them back to more the party that they were when you were there?
Well, get away from virtue signaling. Get rid of your socialists.
Okay.
These are people who don't have any responsibility or any discipline when it comes to the finances of the country. These are people who don't understand jobs. Get rid of the grifters. Are there people in cabinet you have who've been taking money on the side? Are there people who have vested interests, including Mark Carney himself? He has to disclose who he is. He's prime minister of the country. You have no idea how much he has in assets, whether or not the decisions he's making will one way or another affect him or adversely affect him, which I doubt to be the case. We know so little about these ministers and about the policies that they're taking. It's very likely that we are being susceptible to someone else's agenda.
Yeah, that's should be a concern to everybody when you're checking off A, B, C, D, E, whatever on your voting list as to who's going to be the next prime minister. I know it's slightly different than they do it in the States, but still, this is going to be your prime minister if you're voting for enough candidates right on the ballot, and we need to know who this person is going to be, he or she, right? So I mean, man. So here we are, day one as prime minister, Mark Carney. He stops the consumer carbon tax. Well, I guess April 1st is when it kicks in, I think. But so he's at the same time promising to, I think, raise the percentage of industrial emitters. So their tax was going to go up. They're going to bear more of that. So that sounds good, right? Somebody else is going to pay, not me. But is that actually factual? Is this just going to trickle down, and ultimately the consumers are it's going to get passed down to us? How does this work?
Well, like any other tax, and we're seeing this certainly with the second carbon tax, which is the industrial emitters tax, it will already exist. It's called the Clean Fuel Standard, Clean Fuel Regulation. It's been around since 2021, 22. At first, the refiners responded by putting more ethanol in your tank, up to 15% across the country, in order to meet those emissions, buying carbon credits and whatnot. Ethanol doesn't have the same properties as gasoline. Now, of course, they can't achieve that goal, which has to be established by 2030, of dropping emissions 30% at the refinery level. So they're passing it on to consumers. It's costing you 4 cents a liter. That's a hidden carbon tax. It's an industrial carbon tax. And my sense is that what Carney's going to do is he's going to take that 20 cents a liter you're spending today. By the way, it's 18.5 cents a liter here in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, where you have a 5% GST. I know here's some media say, oh, it's 17 cents a liter. What's a penny and a half? Well, a penny and a half is your GST, and you have to include that as well because it's a tax. What they're going to do is they're going to take that amount and impose it on the refineries, who are then going to pass it right back on to you. Now, the advantage for the Liberals and the NDP, who are perched heavily on the left, oh, we can blame the oil industry for it. We can blame business for it. They hate business. They hate manufacturing. And if they can find a scapegoat, they make those folks the scapegoat. If they don't leave the country, they're going to actually pass this on to consumers. At the end of the day, good Canadian voters are going to be left holding the bag. You wonder why they want to.
Okay, so this is not as good a deal as it sounds initially. Okay, now Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, he says the carbon tax legislation has not been revoked, right? Still in place. So technically, the government could, put it in again tomorrow if they felt that it was warranted. So things haven't changed as much as we think it has. Now this is coming from Pierre Poilievre. Is that true?
Well, that's right. The framework legislation is still there. So, it's a little bit like saying, how does the framework legislation work? Is following Parliament passes, and it sets out and says, gives a permit to do the following. Then bureaucrats are set in to create the regulations around it, and then they have a regulatory impact analysis and that stuff. And then, as long as it suits the intent of what Parliament has put in legally and for the words, it passes. So what's happened now is not the legislation that says, yeah, we want greenhouse gas emission caps and pricing. That still exists. What doesn't exist for the time being is that it's been held back, it's been paused, is that the effective rate of the tax post March 31st. So 2 weeks from tomorrow, Tuesday, we're going to see gasoline prices drop about 18.5 cents a liter here in Alberta. In my province of Ontario, we have a 13% HST. It'll drop about 19.9 cents a liter. The Maritimes, it'll drop about 20.3 cents a liter because they have a 15% GST, HST. So all this really means that it's going to be a nice 30 days until there's a new government. At the end of that day, there's two very stark choices for voters and consumers. If you like the carbon tax, you're going to love the fact that he's going to put it back on, but he's going to hide it as an industrial carbon tax. So that means if you vote Liberal, you're voting for higher costs for everything. Or if you vote Conservative, you're going to see it gone. Not just the carbon tax, but that clean fuel standard, that second so-called industrial tax, and there'd be no gains. So look, I'm a Liberal, not a member of the Conservative Party, never donated a dime to them. Okay. But I know where I'm coming from. I know where my family's coming from, and there's no way in the sun would trust us.
That's really interesting to hear that from somebody who's liberal-minded, at least the way the Liberal Party used to be. Okay, but so Pierre Poilievre. I think a lot of people see him maybe as a bit of a savior sort of thing, and I don't think he's gonna save our Canada in the broader sense. And however, I like some of those policies that I think for example, getting rid of the carbon tax. I think yay, I think that's long overdue. But let me ask you, what do you how would you assess him? I guess. Looking at it from a Liberal point of view, he's going to have some pros and cons, right? So what would you see as his kind of strengths and weaknesses?
Well, I think his strength is his ability to communicate, and he's an excellent debater. I know I debated him in the House of Commons. I didn't lose, but I don't think I won. And that was 10, 15 years ago. So yeah. I think he's improved a lot. I think his strength is that he is and has plenty of experience in government. We need that more now than ever, not an outsider coming in. And like Jean Chrétien, who had no experience in the private sector, he did a damn good job as a prime minister. And I think I'm seeing this very much the same shades as Justin Trudeau. So I know I have my Liberal friends keep saying, "Oh, he's never had experience in the private sector." Well, you know what? Neither did Jean Chrétien, and we needed the man for the hour to do just that. On the negative side, I think he rubs people the wrong way because people don't like to be told that they're being silly.
Right.
Maybe my suggestion to Pierre would be, let me handle that with Liberal voters, because I guess for a lot of people, we consider ourselves nice, kind, decent snowflakes. But at the end of the day, we've got untold harm to our country. We've allowed these guys to run and pass the elections. So I think that's the positive and the negative. I don't think the negative is as negative as one. Conservatives went with someone light last election, didn't work out so well for them. You need a strong, committed voice that people can surround themselves by.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's just going to come down to the basics here. Who do we trust to get us to a place where we're actually able to pay our bills again? That might be what it boils down to here. Let me ask if you think the efforts we're putting into as Canadians, like the carbon tax, is it worth it? The cost to the public purse is massive. There's no two ways about that. But realistically, these kinds of efforts, whether it's a carbon tax or something else, call it something else, whatever, is it worth it? Big picture. Are we actually having an impact globally? From what we're doing here in Canada.
It's a ridiculous idea concocted by a group of economists sitting in some conference room somewhere, concocting ideas as to how to burden the economy while pretending that somehow what Canada does is having an effect on changing the weather. It's that simple. And the science is absolutely settled. It's not settled. There is no consensus. A good friend of mine, who I've known for many years, is an atmospheric scientist in the United States, and said there's no way we can understand the dynamics of our atmosphere. It's just that complicated. So for these people to say that 1.5% of 0.04% is somehow affecting the weather, which is what Canada's contribution is, You have to be either insane or believe that people are fundamentally stupid. And that's exactly how
Right.
this has been played for some time. And we've wrecked an entire economy around it. And that, of course, is leading to disaster. So bad idea, bad false science,
Hmm.
bad political actors implementing it, and Canadians holding the bag with a bleak outlook for their economic futures, not just for this
Yeah.
generation, but for several generations to come.
And you know, the funny thing is, I honestly believe that, the folks, the majority of just average Canadians who are on board with the, climate alarmism and so forth, and they're believing they're, saving the world essentially. I mean, they're doing it out of a goodness of their heart sort of thing. I think they're just maybe misinformed again on whether it's actually going to have any impact when you look at the massive emitters like India, China, okay, Russia, the States. Is it going to make a difference at the cost of our economy here? I think again, yeah, rather naive, I would say. But now we have a wealth of oil and gas, fossil fuel energy here in Canada. Much of the world would love to purchase it, right? I mean, and and now with the threat of U.S. tariffs, we have the possibility of building a coast-to-coast pipeline. So, do you think it'll happen? And if so, what would it take? What would we have to change to make that happen?
Well, it's ironic it took Donald Trump to make us to wake up to the idea, at least, of building a natural gas pipeline from coast to coast. I mean, seriously, if that's how fragile our national identity is based and our economic interests are determined, we need to have a real strong revisitation of our priorities as a country, as well as our traditions, and understanding a little bit more about my country. Whether I'm here in Ontario or Alberta, I think so few people understand the interconnectedness of the nation, and that it shouldn't take the fragility of a tariff threat to create a situation where the country believes now it should be building pipelines after spending a decade dumping on the very thing that makes us prosperous. Listen, like it or not, oil and gas is our bread and butter.
Yeah.
And selling it to the rest of the world makes it even better, not just geopolitically timely, but it makes us relevant because countries have come knocking on our door. We didn't go seek their help. They came to us and we said there's no business case. Well, that's nice if you want to take the view that the climate is all an issue. Yes, we are nice people, but we're not to be taken fools. And for that reason, I think this is a very important election. It won't say so much about the politicians. I think it's very clear where they stand. It'll say a lot about Canadians and their level of understanding of just how bad the situation is. And anyone out there who's saying, oh, it's fine and we need someone to stand up against Donald Trump and oh, who cares about pipelines? They must be on good pensions, working for the federal, provincial, or municipal governments, and they have things looked after. The rest of us don't. We don't have that luxury. So it's time for these people, as I've said before, not to be so damn selfish.
Well, so somehow, I mean, if I'm an investor with big bucks, I want to invest somewhere where I'm going to get good return on my investment. So, okay, thinking Canada, I have expertise in oil and gas. Let's go do this now. The only way they're going to do that is if there's an environment here, if there's regulations in place that will make it safe for them to bet their shorts on actually having the pipeline built completely and that it keeps on going so they can get their money back on the investment. And of course, this is also going to benefit Canadians from east to west, north to south. So legislation has to be changed. Do you think Poilievre would do it? Do you think Singh would do it if there's some way he could actually win, or Carney? Would any of them actually stick out their necks and I guess have to wrestle with Quebec somewhat to get it through their province to the other end of the country?
Well, Singh and Carney represent the problems of the past, and if they say they're going to do something to change that around to suddenly build pipelines, I mean, their own experience and their own actions have determined that they are against it. Again, Mr. Carney's case, the Prime Minister, with 130,000 people voting, has already moved, away from investment and divested Brookfield and others from investing in Canadian pipelines, while thinking nothing of building pipelines in Brazil or the UAE, and being part of the conference of the party's 30th anniversary next year in Brazil, where they've put a 4-lane highway 100 miles into the deep jungle, destroying some of the most valuable force in the world in order to virtue signal their creds. However, I think for Mr. Singh, it's a foregone conclusion. He'll be lucky to hold his seat, and I don't see how there's a way back for him. But by their own examples, their conduct in life prior to the election, it's pretty clear those two have excluded themselves from rebuilding Canada and getting it back on track.
All right. Well, hopefully, we'll see what happens. But I mean, I think Polyev would be inclined to do something there. Again, I mean, how do you get through Quebec? I'm not
Well, I think
sure.
he has to. Yeah, yeah, and he has to by hook or by crook get something east-west, and it doesn't just mean natural gas; it also means oil. By the way, Alberta has just announced that it has far greater natural gas reserves than first thought. It's now possibly sixfold greater than what was believed before.
Yeah.
Geologists have been looking at this a little bit more on the oil side. The United States is running out of its tier one natural gas and oil. It needs Canada. So this game that we can drill, baby drill, is baloney. They've
Yes.
drilled as much as they can.
I think you're right. They do need us more than Mr. Orange Hair is admitting, right? So okay. Let me ask you briefly on Maxime Bernier, People's Party of Canada. Really interesting guy. I had him on the show here as well. Got some again just interesting ideas. He's willing to take on dairy cartels, as he calls them, right? Supply management. And so he's pretty bold, but, he doesn't have a seat. I think last time they got around 5% of the vote overall. But we don't have proportional representation, so I don't know if anything's going to happen there at all. And of course, he could split some of the, close ridings with the Conservatives. So, any thoughts on, where he's coming from? You think he'll get any traction?
I don't think he's going to get much traction. I think this is the last shot for him. I know Max. We worked together in the House. He came a little after me as a Conservative minister, or I came during the time in which I was there in opposition. I suspect that this battle is going to be so narrowly focused between the two parties, and the differences are pretty stark. It's going to leave those who represent a little bit more of a variation of the various fringes. The NDP, a more radical side of Liberals, or vice versa, by the way, and the Conservatives, the PPC, a more different but same sphere or firmament as Conservatives. I think it's going to be a question Canadians have to ask: is it Liberal or is it Conservative?
Okay.
Is it Polyev and his vision? Or is it Carney more of the same? And I think that's going to be anything else beyond that is, unfortunately, with the exception of the Bloc, a bit of a distraction.
Right. Okay. On the tariff front, what do you think of the suggestions being made by many politicians, provincially and federally, that we need to retaliate and retaliate hard, perhaps even, cutting off energy supplies, whether that's oil or electricity or gas, or putting a tax on it as well. Is that like a good idea, or is that really a dumb idea? Is it going to backfire on us?
I don't think people really understand the nature of the relationship on energy with the United States, and most believe that it's just one side versus the other. In the case of natural gas, Western Canadian natural gas makes its way to the U.S. Midwest and to even the Gulf Coast. Same for oil. When it comes to oil and gas in Ontario, for instance, our oil comes from Western Canada, but it transits through Wisconsin and eventually through Michigan. So it makes its way through the United States back to Ontario. Without that, 90% of all the oil we have, making propane for your oil, for your diesel, for your gasoline, for your aviation fuel, would be effectively cut off. So I don't think it's well thought out by those who just a few years ago didn't even know about that thing called Line 5. So what we now have, of course, with natural gas, I'm in Ontario. My natural gas for this house comes from south of the border, the so-called Ohio and Pennsylvania shale plays known as the Marcellus. We don't get our Western Canadian natural gas here anymore, as we've had since the late 50s, early 60s. So I think Canadians really need to understand the inextricable relationship back and forth. And some of these lines go back and forth several times. We, in fact, have large caverns here in Sarnia, Ontario, which called Dawn, which is a deposit for American natural gas. So if we want to play that game, as Doug Ford tried to do last week, we're going to get burned. By the way, Danielle Smith, I think, has been the hero in all this. She's played chess while the rest have been playing checkers.
I like the analogy. That's very interesting. Appreciate you sharing that perspective there. You touched on this earlier, the federal government's EV mandate. So electrical vehicles, if I remember correctly, 100% of new vehicles by 2035 need to be electric vehicles, right? And I'm going, that's like 10 years from now. How is that possibly going to happen? You were mentioning something about a factory in Ontario that's going to be closing down as well, right? EV stuff that's just not selling.
Yeah, look, EVs are a failure, and we predicted they'd be a failure. I worked in the automotive sector. Full disclosure, prior to being a member of Parliament in 1993 to 2011, I was actually worked for a little tiny company called Toyota Lexus. Public relations for the company. The company did not go down this road of the EV rabbit hole because there's all sorts of incentives and goodies and grift that was given to them. The company said we need to be pragmatic. Our future is actually hybrids, and if we're looking at any type of EVs, it won't be based on, lithium-ion batteries. It'll be on different types, solid-state batteries, a bunch of other technologies that are coming down the road. But what we've done here is we've committed ourselves to the idea that, because the Biden economics and because of the so-called IRA, which was not the Irish Republican Army on St. Patrick's Day, but in fact was the Inflation Reduction Act that he proposed in 2021, basically saying, we'd have EV mandates in the United States. We are going to impose those on Americans. Well, Trump comes in and says, no imposition. So 90% of all of our automotive that we make in this country goes to the United States. And we thought, well, that's because they're going to be building EVs. We should start to shift towards EVs, put billions of your dollars and mine, and much of it borrowed, into incentivizing battery production and car manufacturing and vehicle manufacturing. Now there's no EV mandate, which means we have basically backed the wrong horse with billions of dollars.
Wow.
Now, of course, we have these funny things where several of the plants are shut down.
Well, yeah, this is not going to happen, basically by 2035, if ever. And maybe that's a good thing. All right. Let me give you give us a few final thoughts, if you can, about when you think the election is going to be and what is it going to be about.
This week, it'll happen before Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Possibly Monday. He has to come back on Monday. He doesn't have a seat in the House of Commons. So it's we're tick-tock 6 days to election. 37 to 40 days later, we'll have a federal election, which will be on, I suspect, just after Easter. So last week of April, beginning of May, that's up to him. Either way, we're 5-6 weeks away from a new government that finally has a mandate.
Is it going to be tariffs or affordability or both?
It's going to be everything. Tariffs, orange hair man south of the border. And
I got to leave it there because my clock's ticking here. But okay, I want to steer people to your website, affordableenergy.ca. Dan McTeague, thank you so much for sharing your heart here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Ask you to encourage your friends to subscribe, WizeUp.ca.